Hey everyone, Adam Larson here, and welcome back to Count Me In. Today I'm joined by Mike Jones, CEO and managing partner at Resound, an agency known for helping firms build standout brands. In this episode, Mike shares how he got started working with accounting firms and the insights he's gained from building the Remarkabrand Index, a tool that measures how firms differentiate themselves in the marketplace. We dig into why brand differentiation is so important, how it impacts things like firm value, client loyalty, and pricing, and the biggest branding mistakes he sees across the industry. Mike also offers practical advice for firms looking to stand out and explains how branding comes into play during mergers and acquisitions and when private equity gets involved. So, if you want fresh ideas on branding and real strategies to help your firm tell its story, this episode's for you. Let's get started. Well, Mike, I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. And I figure we could start off just talking a little bit about your background and kind of what inspired you to help, especially accounting firms.
Yeah, my story with accounting firms as a marketing agency owner really began in like 2016, 17. We actually got our first accounting firm client, and we helped them rebrand, and that kind of introduced me to the industry in a more formal way of like, oh, there's accounting firms, which I knew, but just how do they think, how do they work? And got really involved in a couple associations, particularly the Association for Accounting Marketing. And as me and my team just got more involved in the industry, started picking up more clients, really just started noticing that like while brands mattered to accounting firms, there was just kind of a lack of understanding of like the value that brand can bring to the table for an accounting firm or for an advisory firm or something like that. And just a trepidation, right? To take the risk to say, hey, we're going to really improve our brand in the marketplace, and not just like the look and feel, but also just like, what do we say? Who do we say that we are? What's our position? How do we bring our culture more to bear? I think a lot of accounting firms are very culture based. They really think about their culture a lot, but they don't always think about how do we tell that story to potential clients? How do we tell that to the market? And so we kind of went all in and said, hey, let's really help this industry as much as we can. And that led us really to start doing a lot of data gathering and start putting out what is now our Remarkabrand Index, and say, hey, how can we really showcase where this industry is at from a brand perspective? Let's set the bar and establish that for firms, and then maybe encourage them to raise their bar and see where they can go. And it's been really fun. I think the last 3 years that we've been running this index year over year, we've seen improvements from lots of firms. Firms are really, I think, starting to see that like they need to invest in their brands in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't always mean a rebrand, but really improving the identity of who they are, telling their story better, being clearer about their position, about why they do what they do, the value that it delivers. And I think there's a lot of other things in play too. Private equity has gotten really involved in the industry. I think they're forcing a little bit of some identity crisis for some firms, both on the acquisition side, getting acquired by private equity, and then also for firms that want to remain independent and they really want to leverage that independence as a key differentiator in the market. And how do we tell that story better for those firms? So that's kind of the back history in a nutshell. There's lots more details there, but that gives it kind of the 2-minute version.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely want to dig into that index a little bit more. But this concept of brand differentiation, why is it so important to obviously, there's some obviously like, why is it so important to differentiate from other brands? Because you want people to figure out who you are. But I think it goes more than that.
Yeah, way more than that. I was actually just having this conversation this morning with a group of accounting firms. But like, I think there's 3 real big ones that are easy for a lot of people to grasp. And that is differentiating your firm, particularly through your brand, right? Through the identity of your firm, that story that you're telling, who you help, how you deliver value. One actually produces greater value for your firm. And I, talking to a lot of people who are very focused on numbers, and rightfully so. And when you can say like, hey, this is actually an investment in your firm that's going to have actual return, right? So the value of your firm itself, it's estimated that about 20%, on average, 20% of your intellectual property value of your business is your brand. So if you're investing in intellectual property, which I would hope that you are at some level, why would you not be investing in your brand? Because it actually delivers value to your business should you choose to do an acquisition. When you have two firms coming together in a merger, one of them has to win from a brand perspective. If yours is the more valuable, differentiated, clear brand, you're going to be able to command a little bit more value at the table, either directly, actual cash value, or indirectly through how you get to control that experience moving forward. There's some other big ones. Price. Brand differentiation allows you to have a lot more flexibility of not being stuck in cost-based pricing, but really being value-based priced and having a lot more opportunity to increase prices, command higher prices without people asking a whole lot of questions, right? We've seen that over and over with clients that we work with, where when they're really clear about the expertise they deliver, particularly when they have industry expertise on top of a service level expertise, they win more deals, they win higher price point deals, greater margin, and a lot fewer questions. Those deals happen a lot faster. And then there's also this thing of loyalty. And I think a lot of firms, when you think of loyalty, we think of like, oh, our best clients who make all these referrals for us. And that's great. Like that's what we should all be aiming at, is building a brand that has a great client experience to such a degree that our clients want to actually make referrals for us. But at another level, like one tier down from that, your clients should want to continue to do business with you and do business across service lines. And brand, when you tell that story really well of like how you deliver value, how you're different than everyone else in your industry, how you can deliver a specific value to certain types of clients, you actually get an opportunity to earn not just that one time or that one service. You get an opportunity to earn all the possible business that you could give them. We've actually seen firms where like when they're doing mergers and acquisitions and they're thinking cross service lines, so they're like, okay, traditional accounting firm, we do tax, we do some audit, maybe we're starting to do some advisory. And they're thinking like, oh, maybe we should add a cyber group, right? Maybe we should add wealth management. Those opportunities become much easier to cross into and start offering to all of your clients when you're really clear about the total value that your brand brings. You can see this reflected in like consumer product brands. This is an easy example that we can all think about and know of. It's like, how many SKUs does Nike have? Thousands, tens of thousands. Is Nike the best at everything that they put out in the market? Are they the best basketball shorts? No, they're not. Arguably, probably not, right? And yet customers buy all of these cross products, right? And it's because they're not buying the product first and foremost. They're buying the brand. They're buying a relationship of trust that they already have, and they're extending it beyond the one product line that they've already bought. And another good example from Nike of this is when they entered the golf market, they had zero products in golf prior to that. Within 10 years span, they were the highest grossing golf product company in the world. And that's brand to me. I'm like, how do you do that any other way than just have an amazing brand? And when you put that logo on a pair of golf clubs, people are like, great, I'll take it. Now, they figured some things out, the whole like, hey, we're going to, sponsor an athlete like Tiger Woods, right? Or Michael Jordan in basketball. Like that model has really worked well for them. That's accelerated that brand trust that they try to gain in new markets. But when you take those kinds of examples, and they're consumer product goods, and we could say, hey, there's aspects of that don't translate into accounting and advisory firms. Absolutely, right? But when you think about the strength of brand that Nike has, that absolutely translates to any company in any industry. And I would argue for accounting firms, your brand is one of your best tools in your toolbox for creating really loyal customers who are going to stick with you a long time and who are going to grow with you in terms of the services and the different lines that you're going to offer them over time. So as your firm grows and you add more service lines, you have great opportunities to have those clients grow with you if you have a really strong brand. If you don't have a strong brand, what they'll end up doing is they'll silo you, they'll position you as a service provider of one type of service. So whatever I bought the first time from you is all I know about you. Your brand was so specific to a service line that I can't wrap my head around how you offer something else, right? And that's where like thinking about your brand as beyond a service, right? More in line of we have a particular audience that we serve, maybe it's industry niche, or we have a particular way of doing business, or we have certain types of clients we are best suited for. And that's part of our brand, right? Maybe it's like, hey, saying, hey, we're the accounting firm for small businesses between a million and 5 million, right? Okay, maybe you could have a few different industries in there, but there's like particular challenges that businesses have between those two numbers. And we're really good at solving those. If that's part of your brand, you're going to have a really great opportunity to build really long-term relationships with those types of clients. So yeah, there's lots more you could talk about, just the value of like saying you're different and looking different, sounding different, making a choice easier for a client. One of the fascinating aspects of the human brain is that it's actually wired to conserve calories, and decision making costs us calories. Okay. So the longer the longer it takes to make a decision, the more our brains start to actually look for shortcuts. How can I get out of this decision making cycle faster? And if you don't have any difference of choice, right? All these choices look the same to me. One of the easiest shortcuts that our brains look for is price. Mm-hmm. And that's why, just think about the last time you're in a cereal aisle and you didn't have a plan, didn't have a preference, and you go in and you're like, oh my goodness, there's like a million choices. I don't know what to pick, right? What do you gravitate towards? Most people gravitate towards that little red or yellow tag on the display that shows me that I'm getting a deal, right? I could pick from all of these, but I'm going to go pick the one that's cheapest, right? And start looking for like price per ounce. So if you want to be in lowest cost, that's the way you're going to differentiate. Great. But I don't think I know too many firms that want to do that. And so if you really want to not have cost be the issue, you need to differentiate through other things.
Yeah.
You need to look at how your brand can really allow the client to make a decision faster.
Yeah, I think your explanation has been really insightful, and you've definitely learned a lot by building this index. So talking about the index, what exactly does it measure, and why build an index in the first place? Those are the two things I wanted to ask you.
So the measurement is differentiation. So okay. It's not a total, like, I think some people have thought, oh, it's a total score of my entire brand experience. And I would argue, no, it's probably not that. Because there's things that I'd want to see that I can't know unless we have a conversation. For someone to say, oh, I want to put a value on my brand, or I want to put like a ranking on my entire identity as an organization. Well, things like values start to come into that conversation. What's the personality, the behavior traits? What are some of those like kind of less tangible aspects of brand? But one thing that we can definitely measure from the outside for almost any brand is, what does it look like? What does it sound like? And then there's some digital metrics that tell us whether they're getting exposure, right? Yeah. Reach. And so that's what we've tried to do, is collect data on accounting firms. We have almost 1,500 accounting firms. And we're now in our third year. We'll have our new index. We've collected over 40 data points on each one, everything from logo, colors, fonts, taglines, website experience, some more like data-driven pieces of information like page speed, scores for how fast the websites are, which is an amalgamation of like what the experience is like. Some search engine optimization scoring around domain authority, which is actually a third-party score from a firm called Moz that we use, as well as offsite links. So who's linking back to you? How much authority do they have? Which is an amalgamation of like, hey, do you have reach with your brand online? And are those credible sources that are talking about you or publishing about you? There's a few other data points. We started collecting a lot of data over the last 2 years on social media. So particularly LinkedIn, because I think that's where a lot of accounting firms are focused. And the data backs that up. When we look at just follower counts, even looking at like things like follower count per employee. So really trying to take the size out of the equation a little bit. Size does matter, but it also doesn't matter for great brands. I think there are fantastic brands out there. You don't have to be, one of the big four to have a fantastic brand. Now, granted, I will let you in on a little secret. The big four are the top four in our index. And some of that comes down to their reach is so great.
Yeah.
And because that's still a part of our scoring. But our score is really trying to point out how you're different, right? So
Okay.
between reach and identity. So like, how different are your colors? How different are the fonts that you use in your collateral? How different is your social media following, and some even words used in your tagline? So we do some analysis around that, and that's really what we're trying to do, is put out there a score that maybe is helpful for firms to know, like, how different are we? Are we able to kind of cut through and create a sense of personality and difference from our competition in the marketplace? And then on top of that, like, as we study that data and we look at the top ranked firms in the data, what are they doing that we can learn from that maybe can be extrapolated down for other firms that want to maybe improve that different score? So that could be things like, one of the things we found was top firms don't use acronyms anywhere near as much as lower ranked firms. They invest in SEO and search engine optimization. We've even started collecting data. This won't be public for another couple months, but we started collecting data this year on what technology stacks from a marketing perspective do all these firms use, and particularly interested in the top firms, the top 20% of our index.
Mm-hmm.
What are they using? So we have some really interesting data still coming out this year. Yeah, that was kind of the preface of it. And some of it was just, hey, let's start measuring and put a measurement on these things. And then now firms can benchmark themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And not only benchmark themselves across the industry, but we can benchmark ourselves to a number from last year to this year to the next year. Are we seeing improvement?
Yeah, and I could see the possibility of somebody looking at the index and noticing that, hey, that firm's across town. Wait, we have similar colors. We have similar this.
Yep.
Well, how can I differentiate myself from my competition in my local area? And it could be a way to kind of help build yourself up and learn about yourself in a way.
Yeah. And we actually, interestingly enough, we use this data with a lot of our clients too.
Okay.
So when they ask us to do competitive research, the first thing we do is go pull all their competitors from the index. We'll do some additional data gathering because there's things that you can't measure as easily.
Yeah.
Some more qualified analysis. One of them that we have yet to solve yet, I'm excited. I'm hopeful that I think maybe next year we'll be able to solve, which is, how does each firm kind of talk about the industries and the services that they offer, and how different is that from other firms? And so, even just like looking at like saturation of industries and that kind of thing, I think would be some really interesting data for a lot of firms to look at. So we do that more on a qualified basis.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can start to track that on a more quantifiable basis. That would be really cool.
That would be really cool. So you've been learning a lot and you've been sharing a lot. Are there maybe you could share some maybe common branding mistakes that you've seen, especially with all the data you've been gathering?
Yeah, I alluded to one already. Acronyms.
Yep.
This is a really big one. I get it. I understand why firms trend towards acronyms. It's just easy. You've got a name built out of four, founders or four partners that have been senior and they're probably all gone, right? They're all out of the business. And it's just easier politically in the firm to just do the acronym. It's probably already happened without you even knowing it or really consciously deciding to do it. Everyone wants to shorten down long names. And so one way to shorten a name is to make an acronym out of multiple words. The problem is acronyms they just don't live in someone's head in an ownable way unless they spell something.
Yeah.
So you think of like great acronym names like NASA or Geico. Those are fantastic because they actually are pronounceable names. They don't necessarily mean anything. You infuse that meaning over time, but they're still a word essentially, right? It creates a new word, an invented word. But when you just have 3 or 4 random letters smashed together, that's really hard for people to remember and to put meaning, like apply a meaning to that. It can happen. The big 4 are a good example of that. You spend a long enough amount of time and enough money with enough reach, you can kind of overcome that.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're seeing is that acronyms for the most differentiated brands are going away. They're finding new names. I think Aprio is a great example of that, going to a new name that really doesn't really mean anything. And that's fine. Invented names are great, but something pronounceable, something ownable, something short. So names are one. We also see like, I mean, this won't be a surprise to anyone, but blue is like the heaviest used color across the industry. I mean, it's like order of magnitude higher than any other color. So if you are relying on, blue as your primary brand color, you're probably gonna have a hard time differentiating through your color. And so we've been looking a lot at like, what are other colors? Like, surprisingly, even green is not used as much as I would have thought in an industry that deals so much with finance and money. So there's opportunity there, bright, vibrant colors with energy, orange and red. I think for maybe the wrong reason have been shied away from. I think, when a lot of people think accounting, they think, oh, I want to be compliance driven, risk averse, safe. And I think a lot of people gravitate towards blue when they start thinking about what they're trying to communicate as a firm, because that seems like a really safe color. But the reality is, like, customer and specific, just your clients in general, all have very different subjective views to color. So to say like you have this overarching, like, this color, like red always means power, I don't know that you can make that gross generalization. And especially in kind of the hyper culturally aware, fractured digital world that we live in, where every color can kind of be subsumed in almost any way, I think you have an opportunity to take any color that fits you. It has some level of meaning, but go grab something that's different, that's interesting, and own it. And then you infuse it with the meaning that you want to give it over time. A little bit of a stretch there. I don't know that red's always going to be like the safe color, but if you want to like have some energy and utilize that as part of your differentiation, like, hey, maybe we have a more personable, relational aspect to our brand. Red's a great color for that. Orange is a greting color for that. So we're kind of getting the weeds now, but that's the stuff I live and breathe. So yeah.
Yeah, you could tell. That's I've never thought so much about that, how color could affect so many things, and I kind of chuckled to myself when you're saying red. Not a lot of accounting firms use red, but red could be negative to them because
Yep.
in this Excel
In the
spreadsheet,
red.
red is a negative number. So that could be
Yep.
why people shy away from it. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's just a theory. I don't have any
No,
data to back
it's
that up.
probably a good one. I like it. And again, like, that comes back to like how you use it too, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
maybe if you have red, don't put a bunch of red numbers on your website, right? Like, use a different color when you're communicating numbers, knowing that. But like, there's a way to use red. And I mean, there are firms that use it, and some higher ranked firms in our index too. So I wouldn't say there's a color that's like, oh, no one's using it, and therefore you have an opportunity. Probably on the spectrum of color, like purple is a big one that there's, in terms of fewer firms using it, purples and pinks, that kind of color, somewhere in there. Yellow is a little bit less used. I know E&Y uses it. Some of that also has to do with just functionality. Yellow is a harder color to see, and so how you apply it gets a lot trickier. But yeah, those are just a couple. I think our last report from last year, we had, I think, 16 different insights that we pulled, and I'm sure we could have pulled even more and published. And we're working right now on our 2025 edition of the index. We've got all the data. We're sifting through it right now and doing some analysis, and we'll have our new report here in about a month on May 12th. So
now, can folks just access that on your website?
They can. If they go to remarkabrand.com, that's the best and easiest way to go find that report. It'll be really clear right there. And you can even sign up now if people want to go check it out and get on the pre-release list. And then you can also get access to last year's report when you sign up. So
I encourage everybody to check a link in the show notes to check out that report. I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned. You talked a little bit about mergers and acquisitions, and that's happening a lot now with the way the markets are going. A lot of companies are getting swooped up. Can we talk a little bit about what that impact is on a brand's identity and what you should consider when you're going if you're going down that road?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people concerned about that in various ways, right? I think one is if you're the acquiring firm. So I want to take that kind of perspective for a moment first. Your brand is the one that's going to win, right? Like, you're acquiring them. They're going to roll up most likely into your brand. And so there's like questions around like, how closely aligned are they already? So I'd be evaluating things like, what are their core values compared to yours? Where are their differences in how they live those out behaviorally? So it's one thing to say, oh, our core value is excellence and their core value is excellence. But what does that mean and what does that really look like on a day-to-day basis for those two firms? Because when you merge them in, they now need to live by your set of values and your personality and your style and your behavioral systems of your firm. And if they are so drastically different that there's going to be a lot of friction in that process, you're going to see a ton of turnover. It's estimated, like on average in other industries, when you do an acquisition or a merger, 80% of the staff will turn out in 3 years from the acquired firm.
Wow.
And so, like, if you don't have a plan beforehand, even as you're in conversations with another firm about acquiring them or merging them in, about really how different are we? It doesn't mean don't acquire them. It doesn't mean like don't merge them. The numbers might all make sense.
Yeah.
It might be the right play, but know what the work is going to look like on the back end so that you can realize as much of the talent as possible. I mean, the expectation is probably never that you're going to keep 100% of everybody.
Of course.
That just never happens, and probably for good reasons. But maybe shoot for 80%, right? Or at the very least know, like, hey, to go in and tell the acquired firm things are going to be different. We're not polar opposites from you, but there's some differences in how we do things. Let's talk about that so you have the best and easiest transition possible. We'd love for you to continue to work here and be a part of what we're doing. So let's make that as easy as possible. It's going to be different, though. There's going to be some change. And when we get into the weeds of what those things look like from a behavioral, cultural standpoint, which really is an expression of your brand, right? I think sometimes we think brand is just, oh, that's just the stuff that goes on the website. It's the stuff that, the logo on the building. And I'd argue, like, brand starts with your culture. It starts with what you believe, the vision that you have of where you're going, the purpose that you have as an organization, and then how you communicate that and build that over time. And that should obviously flow out into your marketing, but it really starts inside with your culture. And so that's a big one, I think, for a lot of firms, is just how do we align our cultures and then be truthful about it? Like, I think there's a lot of acquisitions and mergers where the acquiring firm is like, oh no, it'll be great. It'll be easy. You guys are the same as us. It's like, yeah, maybe superficially, maybe at a certain level you are, but when you get in the weeds, nope, it's different. And honestly, you're probably going to have a much better transition period if you're just honest about what the transition is going to look like, as much as you can know. People are accepting of change as long as it's communicated well, for the most part. So the change management is a big portion of that. Lots of questions around, like, you do a merger, less of like a true acquisition, but you're doing kind of like, we're going to merge these two firms together, stock exchange, right? Or whatever, shareholder exchange of value, but there's no cash on the table. Then you get into questions of like, which brand wins, which brand kind of becomes the brand moving forward. And I see a lot of firms struggling with that. Some of them will just like put the two names together, and there's just big challenges I have with that. One is like, I get it. I understand it. There's equity in both brands. You don't want to lose that. But the reality is within 3 to 5 years, only one of those is going to be left. Like, this happens in every industry over and over and over again. When you mash two brands together, one name ends up winning, because at the end of the day, it's the law of simplicity that wins out. Clients, customers, your prospects, they can't remember two names as well as they can remember one. And so probably whichever name you are inclined to put first is the actual name you should just do. Now, there's a communication plan that's required. Maybe that does take a little bit of time to phase that in, but this whole like, oh, we're just going to like split it down the middle and keep both brands alive somehow, I think is a very inefficient. You're just delaying the inevitable, which is that one of you is going to win out. And it has to, because it needs to be simple. There's a whole nother scenario that I've been talking a lot about lately and thinking about and working with some clients on, and that is for independent firms that don't want to be acquired by private equity.
Mm.
and maybe want to leverage that independence as a value against private equity, they might still be doing mergers and acquisitions. So all those things I just said still are in play. But I think there's this other layer now in the accounting industry, specifically with just so much private equity getting dumped into the industry and being so active, that there's actually an opportunity for a lot of independent firms to create some really winning strategies. There's a lot of concern on the client side of firms being acquired by private equity or being acquired by big firms who are owned by private equity, because they look at it and they go, man, I'm going to lose all the relationship. I'm going to lose all this great client experience that you've been able to develop and deliver for me. It's going to become transactional. That's the fear. And I think if you are still independent and you can deliver a non-transactional, relationship-driven client experience, you've got some really cool opportunity in the next 5 years to probably leverage that in your brand and in your marketing in such a way to really make the case that you shouldn't stick with the big firm that you're at now, client. You need to come over and work with us because we can really take care of you and we can really develop a long-term relationship for you, something that they probably want and want delivered. The other challenge too is private equity firms, a lot of them are doing roll-ups. So they're going to roll up tons of firms in the next 5 years. And all those firms are going to have different niches that they're in. And so the main brand, the platform brand that they're rolling everybody up into is going to lack specificity. It's just going to be like, yeah, we do these things. We do these accounting services. What's the value to the end client? How does it help them in their particular situation? Is there any like, oh, you've got deep expertise in my industry. You really understand businesses just like mine because you've done it over and over and over again. And the people on my account really understand this industry really well. And 9 times out of 10, I think the answer is no, they don't. And then I think another kind of key challenge for private equity backed firms is going to be recruitment.
Yeah.
And that actually just came up on a call I had today with a bunch of accounting firms. I think that's a great opportunity actually for independently owned firms to really say, hey, we can create an experience for you as someone on staff. And if you're on partner track, you've got a great opportunity to have some good financial wins that are going to be a lot harder to find if you're going to a really big firm that's private equity backed. And yeah, it'll be interesting, really interesting to kind of see where this industry goes over the next 5 years. It keeps me excited, keeps me thinking. Lots of opportunity for everybody to kind of keep trying things, innovating, changing. There's nothing static, which is great. So I like it at least. Not
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see if you can add like something to the index about like, impact on the new generation coming in and how much reach they can get to that new generation. Because, obviously when you're in the accounting industry, you hear about the big four. Those are names that we all know, but you won't know number 727 on your list because it's probably some mom and pop shop or some name with like 3 names or whatever. And so it's educating the next generation that there's more than just those big four.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of firms have a ton of opportunity to invest in channels from a marketing and recruitment standpoint that maybe they've been afraid of.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I think podcasts are booming so much within the accounting industry. And then beyond that, I think YouTube's another big channel that's up and coming. And I'm seeing some smaller firms really getting a ton of leverage out of YouTube, both from a marketing, a client acquisition standpoint and from a recruitment standpoint. When you think about younger generations and like where they gravitate towards finding information, learning about things, where their kind of social networks lie in a digital first world, it's not even places like LinkedIn anymore. As much as I love LinkedIn and I tell my clients like invest there, but if you're looking at like, the youngest generations that you're going to be starting to recruit, they don't have LinkedIn profiles yet. You have to teach them how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be, they're going to be on TikTok. They're going to be on other platforms. Even interestingly enough, like even Reddit is probably a place I think a lot of firms need to start thinking about.
Yeah. Interesting.
If you look at even just like Google rankings, they've been like marching up the rankings for lots of questions that people ask. And then as we get into this AI driven world where AI is going to drive a lot of discovery, right? Hey, I'm looking for a job, ChatGPT. What are like the best accounting firms for me to go talk to that are in my city? Like, that's an interesting question, right? If you're not prepared for being in those results and how to get there, I think firms are going to have a hard time. I think it was estimated that like the fastest growing search engines in the world are now AI tools like ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot. And right now they're still piggybacking off of, Google search and other things like that, but they're building their own indexes as well. And so I think pretty quickly we're going to see a lot of things shift into, as like Apple integrates AI into Siri, how many people are going to just be searching with Siri moving forward, and it won't run through a traditional search engine. It'll run through some AI index. So it's going to be it's an interesting, fun world we live in right now.
It really is. And Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really interesting talking through this, and it's not something that we always talk about as finance and accounting professionals, but it's something that we need to be aware of and be mindful of, whether you're within an organization who is just an accounting firm and you're trying to brand that, or you're in a larger corporation that does a lot of other things. We need to be aware of how our firm's identity is out there into the world, and so we can get new clients and all those things. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights today.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me. This was fantastic. Really fun.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.